My name is Lyndsey Wells, and I work as a technology integration specialist for the Wappinger Central School District. This past school year, my team and I collaborated to enhance student learning experiences and kick off a district-wide makerspace initiative. There were many successful projects, including augmented reality, virtual reality, and coding. Today, I'm going to tell you about a 3D printing project called the Helping Hands Project, in which 4 different grade levels within the district aligned New York State learning standards and next generation science and engineering practices to 3D print prosthetic hands using STL files through an amazing organization called Enable. I can't wait to tell you about it. Let's get started. Current educational research suggests that empathy drives design thinking. This is Veronica from Kagoma Gate, Uganda, who is an Enable recipient. She's a great dancer and loves superheroes. In fact, her nickname is Super Healer because she lost part of her arm when she was a baby due to a house fire she survived and recovered from. Our findings indicate that when we share stories like Veronica's with our students, they become more invested in their work and develop perseverance against rigorous content. Here's a quote from Google for Education. Learning virtues and values such as empathy and kindness and developing emotional intelligence are equally as important as the math and science lessons that we teach, in order for children to understand themselves, their connection to others, and the world. Our findings also support this quote. We found that when students understood why they were creating something, they were more likely to become invested in enduring the challenging aspects and rigorous content of the project. Enable self-identifies as a global volunteer network of digital humanitarians. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Enable by watching this short video.
I like to say that there are 3 essential ingredients here. One is 3D printing right now. The other is internet technology. The other is goodwill. You put those 3 together and you've really got a very powerful solution. Pretty good.
How does that work? How is that? Yeah. There you go.
Yay, all right.
Who's going to hand it to?
Thank you, sir.
So we're Enable is the name of our group. This is a 3D printer. This is a MakerBot. They can print out just about anything. They're kind of like a tube of toothpaste. They layer on top of each other and make a 3-dimensional image. These things can be printed out for less than $50 when a prosthetic usually costs about $40,000. So, and all the plans are available online, open access. Anybody that can get access to a 3-dimensional printer can have a hand.
From the measurements, we can choose the style of the hand, the model. This is the famous cyborg beast with the day-old experimental RIT arm design, right? And once you choose the features that you want, it goes off to the printer, and about 3 hours later it comes out of the printer, and then there's a couple of hours of assembly, but we're working on easy assemble positions, and the next thing you know, you've changed a life. But in truth, she doesn't even have to come here. We have an online community. We can take pictures through the mail, we can generate the hands, we can model them, we can print them in her neighborhood. She can take the models and go to a public library or go to a Staples or go to a school 3D printer or ask one of our 500 volunteers to run it off, to print it. Then she can try it. She can send us some video from her smartphone of what pinches and what needs adjusting. We'll go through the process again. This is only $5 worth of materials, so what's the big deal?
If you're interested in learning more about Enable, you can visit their website at enablingthefuture.org. Here you'll be able to learn about different stories, more about Enable, and connect with them via social media platforms. And you can also check out their map of volunteers. Now, this is an interactive map. So if you're interested in connecting with a different volunteer in a different area of the world, you can use this interactive map to connect. Now, if you go ahead and click on an icon, it will bring up their information. So this is in Switzerland. The leader is Joel. Here's Joel's email address, and there's a social media platform. Let's take a peek here. So as you can see, email address, leader to contact, social media platform. So if you are interested in collaborating with an Enable volunteer, or perhaps getting more information about that particular area, you can directly contact these volunteers through this interactive map. As you can see here, throughout the duration of our Helping Hands project, our students had the opportunity to collaborate with 3 extremely talented, kind, and very passionate Enable volunteers. Dean Rock, who lives in Massachusetts and travels to the Dominican Republic with 3D printed parts for fishermen and sugarcane workers in the Dominican who have an upper limb difference or have lost a limb due to work. Luisa Mendez Arruda, who lives in Brazil. She is a textile engineer and she is a fashion designer. Janet de Fofeng, who is in Cameroon, Africa, who is an extremely passionate educator. She travels all throughout Africa promoting STEM in the box and 3D printing, prosthetics, and getting our students involved and passionate about STEM activities. All of these volunteers were extremely kind to our students. We had the opportunity to video conference with these volunteers and pick their brains, so to say, to ask them about their experiences. And they really kindly and passionately shared their unique stories, and we're extremely grateful to have had the opportunity to speak with them. I definitely encourage reaching out to different volunteers around the world to get different global perspectives and, to have a better understanding of what's out there in the world and who's out there and hear their unique stories. In order to prepare our students to have an interview and video conference with an Enable volunteer, we led our students in something called question formulation technique, in which the teacher would do the research and bullet point specific information about the Enable volunteer. The students were then instructed to ask as many questions as they could. Let's take a look at what a question formulation technique looks like. We started by introducing who we are preparing to interview. We give a short bit of information about the person who we are interviewing and what they do. Then we choose specific information to target that is relevant to the student research. Students at this time are instructed to just observe and not comment, but take in the information that they are hearing. Once we have finished giving the information to the students, we tell the students to develop questions based on the information that they heard. We gave them rules to ask as many questions as they could in small groups. Do not stop to discuss, judge, or answer the questions. Write down every question exactly as it's stated and change any statement into a question. We then challenge students to improve their questions. We challenged them to identify close-ended and open-ended questions and to change close-ended questions into open-ended questions and vice versa. We also asked them what the value of each type of question was, so they could really delve into what they were asking the Enable volunteers. We then asked students to prioritize their questions. We gave them the opportunity to rank their questions on a 1 to 3 basis in terms of how important the question was. Then we reflected on the questions that we were going to be asking the volunteers. We then instructed the students to take their best questions in their small group and put them into a doc that we created. We pulled this doc up on the smartboard so that we could see what the groups were typing in, and if there were overlapping questions that were similar to one another, we would ask groups to go back and revise them so they could see what other groups were typing as well. Students used this doc when they were communicating with Dean Rock and the other Enable volunteers as a guide in asking their questions that they found most valuable. They then used the notes section to take notes as the Enable volunteer was giving information to incorporate into their research. The Helping Hands Project was a district-wide collaborative project 3D printing and building prosthetic hands. 4 grade levels took on the challenge with a different focus. Our 4th graders worked as reporters. Their focus was the English language arts. 6th grade were the social engineers. Their focus was social studies. The 7th graders were the mathematicians. And the 11th graders were our studio art designers. Each grade level's task aligned to the next generation learning standards and science and engineering practices. Here's an example of a project goal outline. This was designed for our 6th grade social engineers. Our project spanned from October to February. Within each month, we addressed specific goals and specific standards. We established weekly meeting dates. We typically met for between 1 to 2 days a week. We had team jobs established within each small group. We outlined our student learning objective. And as you can see here, although this was a social studies-based project, our standards aligned with cross-content areas. So as you can see here, here's New York State social studies standards that were addressed. We also addressed New York State Next Generation English Language Arts standards, as well as mathematics learning standards, and New York State Science Learning Standards. Within the New York State Science Learning Standards, we also addressed engineering practices. Our 4th grade enabled team reporters took on an English language arts focus. Students used self-generated questions to conduct research on past, present, and future aspects of the Enable organization and ongoing initiatives. Students wrote articles based on research they gathered from direct sources, such as News ELA articles, the Enable website, and interviews conducted with professionals affiliated with the organization. In addition, students 3D printed and built a prosthetic hand. As you can see, we hit multiple New York State Next Generation learning standards in ELA, math, and Next Generation Science and Engineering standards. Our 6th grade Enable team social engineers approached this project through a social studies lens. Students considered the functional component of the design in relation to the geographical location, cultural aspects, and environmental factors to address the needs of a candidate who lives in a different area of the world. Students video conferenced with Enable volunteers from around the world. They used Google Earth to understand the geography of the location and researched the culture of their chosen area to develop a design. Factors taken into consideration were filament type and tone, aesthetics, hardware, additional materials needed, and the best method of delivery. As you can see, we also touched on multiple standards across different curricular content areas. Our 7th grade Enable team mathematicians considered the scaling and ratio of the design in relation to a child's age and arm circumference. Students developed and conducted their own research method to analyze existing generalized scaling charts to determine accuracy. Students use Google Sheets to generate their data into a line graph and compare the results against the original. Students also 3D printed their own models according to their data and converted the scaling percentages into inches. As you can see, not only did we touch on math standards, but as students explained their research process and their results, they also touched on English language arts standards and science and engineering practices. Our high school enabled team designers were a group of 11th grade studio art students who considered the personalized aesthetic component of each piece in regard to a candidate's lifestyle, hobbies, and interests. The challenging aspect was to make the prosthetic more appealing without compromising the functionality of the design. Students consulted with Enable volunteer and Brazilian textile engineer Luisa Mendes Arruda and used CAD and slicing software to produce their designs. In addition, they attached CAD files and presentations to merge cubes to create an interactive display of their artistic process. As you can see, they touched on many high school visual art standards, English language art standards, math standards, and science and engineering practices. If you visit sites.google.com/view/enable education space/home, you'll be able to see the resource that I put together based on all of the curriculum, content, and project focuses of the Helping Hands project. This is a growing open source site developed by educators and Enable professionals for educators interested in global collaboration, utilizing and designing technology integrated curriculum with an Enable focus aligned to the rigor of the next generation learning standards. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see how useful Enable is. Enable lends students the opportunity to expand their understanding in areas such as individual differences, geographical features, global customs and culture, design thinking, economic resources, advanced technology, environmental factors, and emotional intelligence, and many other real-world applications. If you scroll down further, you'll be able to see different design thinking activities that we incorporated, beginning with empathy in the classroom for each of our grade levels. If you scroll down further, you'll be able to see all of the outlined materials that we utilized for each grade level. We have grade 4 with an ELA focus, grade 6 with a social studies focus, grade 7 with a math focus, and the high school level for studio arts. All of these materials can be manipulated and changed to fit other grade levels. If you click on the additional resources, you'll be able to see a further outline of each project more in depth, beginning with the student learning objective, the full integration of the next generation learning standards and science and engineering practices, as well as many different Google resources that you can utilize, such as mentor slides, student resources, presentations, and additional materials to help walk through the project step by step. There's example articles and interview preparation, such as the question formulation techniques that we utilized, news ELA articles that pertain to specific grade levels, digital tools, as well as the student work samples that we gathered. If you visit the Next Generation Standards page, you'll be able to see how each of the projects specifically align to each grade level and how we incorporated cross-curricular content areas to support this project. If you click on a specific grade level, those standards will pop up with the student learning objective, and all of the standards are specifically outlined and written out, and you can clearly see how they fit into the project and are applicable. If you click on the Design Thinking tab, It outlines what design thinking is, and then there's specific resources that you can use here, such as design thinking activities and resources that you can use in getting your students ready to practice a design thinking mindset. Anything that you'd like to use is free of use. So if you simply click on one of the icons, you'll be able to see a larger view of it, and then you can make your own copy in your own Google Drive, and then utilize it and change whatever you'd like. Current research suggests that the most prominent motivational factor is not money nor success, but it is the process of creating with the intent of sharing with others. This research is relevant to the Helping Hands project because students became extremely motivated when they knew that they were creating something for another person. In doing so, they also became more motivated and were more likely to persevere through rigorous content.